Hey listeners, it's AZ. Welcome to episode 71 of the Fire Rescue Wellness podcast, where I sat down with my friend, Coach Jo Zabal, or sometimes I call her JZ. Little bit about Jo. She comes from a very diverse athletic background, and she has history coaching in everything from high school to collegiate to private industry over the last 20 years. She is currently contracted as a strength and conditioning specialist for the Army at Fort Liberty, formerly known as Fort Bragg, and she is the director of sports performance for Soldiers to Sidelines, which is a nonprofit that empowers all branches of active duty, retired, or wounded military members and military spouses to become coaches through seminars and clinics. Jo and I hit on a lot of diverse topics today, and I know you're going to love this episode. Do me a solid. Give me a rating or a review on whatever platform you listen. Thank you for joining me on the Fire Rescue Wellness podcast. I'm your host, AZ. I find the research and resources and then provide the fire service with the so what, now what, to ensure the health and well-being of every member of our profession. Together, let's thrive. Listeners, welcome back to the Fire Rescue Wellness podcast. And today I'm so excited because I'm here with my friend, Coach Jo. Coach Jo, say hello to the listeners.
Hello to the listeners.
Oh my gosh, I've been looking forward to this episode. If we're going to be honest, I've been looking forward to this episode since before I had a podcast.
Yes.
Isn't that hilarious?
Because we've been talking about having these conversations because we've been having these conversations since like the main COVID hitting and all we could do was talk on the phone.
Right. And, before we get to the big 3 questions, I just want to talk. I want these people to understand how we met and then why we're friends. So I'll start, you fill in the blanks. In 2020, I was on a panel with a couple other tactical coaches at the NSCA Coaches Conference, and I had the opportunity to meet Coach Jo. I think we may have had maybe one margarita prior.
Yeah, if that.
I mean,
definitely that.
Definitely less than one margarita. But anyway, we hit it off immediately. We kept in touch, and then COVID hit. It was the literal worst. But we started this, and I loved it because it just kept me going during COVID. We started this, we solved the problems of the world via FaceTime. It was like weekly, right?
Absolutely. And here's the thing, we solved all those problems and there's still problems. So we still have a job to do, I guess.
Well, and maybe we didn't do a good job of applying our solutions, or maybe no one's listening, but yeah. So the other thing that happened was I took time off in the summer of 2020 because I was supposed to go to a conference and present, and the conference got canceled. And so Jo said, she was just like, hey, you want to come to DC? And I was like, hey, I do. And we had the best time. It was the best time.
It was amazing. You also forget that another reason that we became so close, and Annette would never toot her own horn about this, but I tore my ACL right before COVID hit, about 2 weeks, to where I couldn't even get surgery for 2 months because of COVID shutting everything down. And Annette came out when I was, I think, 2 months post-op. And I mean, honestly, before that, you just kept me going. I mean, I was so down. I couldn't even take, the walks that everybody was taking to keep their sanity. And you made sure that I was good at all times. And then we had those phone calls to make sure I was good and to also solve the problems of the world.
And also, honestly, you were making sure I was good too. So yes. But hey, your knee is 99% better. You played volleyball a couple weeks ago.
Yes, I did. I might be paying for that still. It's doing okay. I had a little flare up, but we're okay. I work with a bunch of stellar physical therapists and athletic trainers that can help me on a daily basis. So I'm not too worried about it.
Okay, very good. And then, of course, now it's my turn for the knee problems. And so everything that goes around comes around. So let's get to those deep, deep questions. Tell me, who is Johannah Zabal?
Okay. Johannah Zabal, by the way, first of all, let's make sure that we are pronouncing that correctly. Annette, thank you for always having pronounced my name properly.
Tell the backstory. You got to tell it.
I do get a lot of Johannahs, Joanna, Joanna, stop calling me that. It's just two separate names, Joe and Hannah. Put them together, Johannah. It's very simple. Another friend of ours, mutual friend, I'm not going to call Dave Terry out, but he has been saying my name wrong for almost the entirety of when we've known each other. And I thought he was just messing with me because I've corrected him multiple times, but it's Johannah. So I go by Joe just because that's so much easier. And everybody can pronounce Joe for the most part. They can spell it most of the time. I do get a lot of Joe, which it is not, but there you go. But that's my name. Who I am, I mean, friend, daughter. I am an Auntie Joe to now, oh my gosh, 6 nieces and nephews. One was just born last week. And a coach, specifically a strength and conditioning coach for the Army. I don't always love working out, but I do it because it makes me better in every way. And I also love singing. There's like little snippets that you can find on my Instagram, and that is also actually something that AZ and I share. And we had a really sweet jam sesh when she visited me in DC when I lived up there and hung out. And we had one of my old baseball players be our guitarist, and we just jammed. It was awesome.
We had so much fun. And I just have to point out, you are so kind not to call Dave Terry out. I mean,
I know.
You could have just thrown him, Dave Terry, under the bus.
Right under the bus. No, because me and Dave Terry are really good friends, and I would never do that to Dave Terry.
Yeah, we need to have a conversation about that pronunciation thing. It's unacceptable. All right, next question. What sets your soul on fire?
So it's been some iteration or some, form of this pretty much all my life, as far back as I can remember. And that's helping people figure it out. I used to use this analogy or a metaphor, I guess it's a metaphor, of a bridge. And so I was like this bridge in people's lives, whether that was like friendship wise, like platonically, romantically, professionally. And it kind of used to make me sad because it was like this temporary thing where I was this place of certainty, but never anyone's destination. I was a way that people could get from where they are to where they're going and feel safe and enjoy the view. But I was never their destination. And that's kind of like the origin of the word coach. And I've talked about this before, probably in other podcasts and things. But the origin of the word coach comes from the word carriage, and it's helping people on their journey and to get to their destination. But I think there was some bitterness and some sadness with some of my life experience wrapped up in that metaphor that I was claiming. And now I feel like I'm more of a bridge keeper, where I'm helping people across the bridge when they're ready, telling them what to expect, how they can best get across, given their skill sets, given what they love, given their history, etc. And also just being a part of their life and getting fulfillment through that rather than being sad after they leave. Because I did get to help them figure something out.
I am speechless. Let's just take a small break. Okay, I'm back. That was an amazing answer. That was so good. And I think that's probably going to roll right into how are you changing the world?
Well, I mean, the answer is cultivated, right? Like I always talk to people. So when I'm working with new coaches and things like that with the nonprofit, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, like I'm always talking about like, what is your coaching philosophy and does it extend out into the rest of your life? Not just while you're coaching. Does it encompass the values that you have as a person, right? And so that's why I can tell you that. That's why I know that, because I work so hard at knowing myself. And so changing the world, I think it's doing that. It's being a small positive piece of people's lives. I think I've gotten this wrong. I think coaches get it wrong when it's too much about us. It's too much about our program and what we can get out of it, and maybe the notoriety, or maybe someone noticing us, or maybe, something like that, versus like giving something without expecting something back from us. Like I've had this talk too with a bunch of coaches where it's like, we want to take responsibility for a lot of things, but we have to take responsibility for the good and the bad. So like, I kind of believe that nothing is really solely our fault and nothing is really solely credited to us, right? Like it was the bus driver who got them to practice. It was the pilot who got them. I'm not just going with all transportation. It was their parents, right? Who fostered this passion in them. It was the particular brand of shoes they decided to wear, like just all these little things. And we're just such a small piece. And I think that's all I can do to change the world. I don't think I'm going to do some big giant thing. I don't think I'm going to have this crazy impactful moment. I think I am building just this brick by brick house of impactful little moments in many, many, many lives. And whether I know and realize the full extent of those moments, it's beautiful and it's so rewarding when we get to when your athlete or soldier or whatever comes back to you and says, "Oh my gosh, like this helped me so much with XYZ." We sometimes get lucky enough that A, they realize that helped, that was the thing that helped, and B, that they actually tell us. But we may never know the impact that we have, but my hope is to continue to strive to have those positive little impacts, and then, we'll see what happens.
And the reason that I have wanted to have you on to talk is because you are one of the most badass coaches that I have ever met. And I've met a lot of coaches. And so let's talk a little bit about first, so the listeners kind of understand. Let's talk about your coaching philosophy. What does it look like to be someone who is cared for by you?
So part of my actual like written out coaching philosophy is that I want to help others, realize their full potential in my own humility, like trying to guide them without being like, this is the way, this is for sure, like this is how you have to do it. And I think that has gone a long way for me in so many settings. Because I used to, early on in my career, I primarily worked with football teams. I don't know anything about football. I know about how you have to move to play football. I know about how you have to accept force and give out, put out force, and kind of like field sport, moving through space, creating space, closing space, all that kind of stuff. And so me not pretending that I knew all the football things was really valuable. And I've always been able to work with populations where like again, like now I'm working with the Army. I don't do soldier things, right? I do not Army, but I understand the demands in terms of like, most things. Other things, I ask all the questions. And then if they're telling me stuff and it's very Army talk, I'm like, whoa, 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 hey, can you tell me about that a little bit? Because I don't know what you're talking about. And they're so cool about it. Like everyone has always been so cool. I think if I said something very elementary, like, what do you mean shoot a gun? What is that? But like, if they're talking about something very specific, some training exercise, I'm like, I don't know what that is. What do you do? What does that entail? And then they can be as, vague or specific as they're allowed to be. And then I can be like, okay, these are the inherent demands of that task, that mission, that training exercise. And then we can go from there. So I think just me trying to understand them is the first thing. Like, I'm not going to talk about myself a lot, even though right now I feel like I'm talking about myself a lot. But when I am coaching, yeah, it's like I am asking all the questions.
And one of the things that maybe the listeners caught, or maybe they didn't catch, so I'm going to bring it to their attention. What I said was, Jo is one of the most badass coaches I have ever met in my life. I did not say she is one of the most badass female coaches I've ever met in my life. And this is something that we've had a lot of conversations about, being female in male dominated fields. So she's a female in a male dominated field of strength and conditioning. I'm a female in a male dominated field of firefighting and strength and conditioning. But let's riff on that a little bit. Being the most excellent coach that you can be, regardless of your gender. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes without saying, like when I remember, 10 to 15 years ago when I was going to conferences, I was one of the only females. There were very few. And now it's like so diverse. There's a lot more females at these things, which is awesome. But like you said, male dominated classically, like, historically has been, it's likely always will be, but it's getting more even. But yeah, like you said, the whole like, oh yeah, she's a female coach, or that's she's really good for a female coach. Like nobody says, oh yeah, it's a male coach, or he's really good for a male coach. Like those things are some things that are like, okay, that's enough of that. But I've had a lot of questions from some of the younger female coaches. And I mean, I've been coaching like professionally, like doing this for a job for more than 20 years, which I started coaching in college. And then I've been doing strength and conditioning for about 15. And I think some of the things that have helped me so much is, one, being physically capable. So always being able to do what you're asking to be done, move the way you're asking someone else to move, and be able to really convey it. Now, this has changed a lot, right? And it's not like I've ever been able to lift as much as my football players or as much as, any male soldier really. But having extreme physical capability doesn't have to mean you do exactly the same as them. It just means like, oh, yeah, she's capable. She could take care of herself, and she does take care of herself. And, she actually cares about this enough to work at being physically capable. Another one that's like huge for me is to be or to live unoffended. I think there's a lot of things that you can just be like, oh, what? He said what? Or kind of get up in arms about. And there are certain things that you should get up in arms about. And I do every once in a while. My coworkers know. Every once in a while, I will do that. But I think there are certain things that are just like, oh, that was more about you than it was about me. So don't let that make you step outside of yourself and do things outside of your character or who you are as a coach. I did that very early on in my career. Stepped outside of who I was, and I've told this story many times, but
tell it again. I love this story.
Yeah, so I mean, I was a baby coach. This is probably 2007-ish, and this like older, more traditional basketball coach brought his team into the performance facility where I was working, and he apparently said something to the salesperson who set his team up with me for the trial. And then that salesperson came to me and said, hey, Jo, the head basketball coach is really mad because I set him up with the girl coach. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll show you, girl coach. And then I proceeded to step outside of myself and what I know to be good coaching. And I, ran his boys into the ground, tried to make him puke, did all these things because I knew that's what he wanted. Excuse me. And so we get to the end of it, and I sold the sessions. Cool. I, wore his team down. Fine, whatever. But I also kind of sold my soul. And I sold out, right? Like I did what I thought was expected of me to be more like, oh, not the girl coach or whatever you want to call it. And because of how icky I felt in that moment afterwards, I was like, nah, never again. That's not going to be me. And it hasn't been me since, which you could ask any of the soldiers that I trained that, I'm the one that's going, watch your fingies, when they're lifting things improperly to pinch their fingers on stuff. I have said the word fingies working with the Army more times than I would like to admit.
Well, and just to sort of draw kind of an exclamation point on that, it sounds like you stepped outside of your values. You stepped outside of what you knew to be right because of the expectation of someone else. And that was immediately, you had a visceral reaction to that. So, I mean, that is so much a part of it too. You have to live within your values. I love that story. I think I've listened to that story 10 times, and I will listen to it 100 more because it's so good.
Just me failing. I love it.
No, but the realization yes. that you did something that went against your grain, and yes. you learned quickly, and you've never done it again. That's incredible.
And I think those are some of my favorite moments, learning moments in my life, and not just in coaching, but just in general, where I realize this moment that I've been taken to the edge of my authenticity, and I'm like, I don't like it here. And I realize I need to back out. Like, this is not me. This is not what I'm doing. I won't have any part of it. We're not doing it. And, we've all made our mistakes and done, things that we're not proud of or not, whatever, just like this story, whether it's something silly and dumb like that or something that has more dire consequences. But I think that moment of learning and actually changing your behavior and not letting it happen again is super important.
I 100% agree. So far we have be extremely capable, live or be unoffended, and as a side note, live within your values. What is the third piece of this for you?
I think just being excellent. So unfortunately, because this has been a male-dominated arena, strength, whether we're talking about strength and conditioning, whether we're talking about firefighting, whether we're talking about being a service member. I just think that you have to be excellent. Like it's almost like expected for you to fail, I think, or do something wrong, or, oh, well, that's because, it's a female coach or whatever, which is changing. I'm not going to say that that's like totally the culture anymore. But I do think, you just combat that with just facts. Like, just, you are an excellent coach. You have a breadth of knowledge that is wildly vast. Like, to think about as a strength and conditioning coach, the amount of things that we need to know. I was running 1,000-pound club for one of our battalions this morning. It's like their team bonding type thing, and our cognitive performance specialist comes up to me and she goes, "There is so much math." And I was like, dude, yes, that is one of just the millions of things that your brain is having to do on a regular basis. And my brain's just going, 435, 555, boo, 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 just going back and forth. But just making sure that you do have that breadth of knowledge and understand that you're not going to know everything. And then I would say be excellent in like building appropriate relationships with the people that you're coaching. As you always say, meet them where they are, right? And then, like, I think another part of being excellent is just offering value. And I quote you so many times a week, probably, in saying, like, if I can get you out of pain, right? Or if we can get them out of pain in just some small way, they'll follow you anywhere. And, that relief, and that, like, even those just, those little aha moments of like, oh, I just needed to turn my foot a little bit. Now that feels way better. Or I just needed to, change my form in this, or I needed to take back my volume a little bit, or I needed to have my rest days on this day instead of going 4 days in a row. I could just go 3 and then have a break. Like, just little things like that that offer value that make such a big difference. Somebody that I talked to recently, he got a new bed, and like, he comes up to me, he's like, Jo, I slept more than 4 hours last night. Like, he was sleeping 4 hours, and I was like, how are you even functioning? And he would come in and train super hard. And he's like, I can't even believe this. This is crazy. Like, and we had talked through his sleep, and like, obviously I'm not a sleep specialist, but like, I just know a lot of really smart people that are, and, try to listen and learn from them. And he took it to heart because he trusted me, because I had built a relationship with him. And then he was like, oh, I can't even believe it. I'm sleeping, 6+, 7+ hours a night now, which, like, is wild. Like, 6 is still trash, but like 4, he went from 4 to 6+. So yeah, I mean, being excellent by having that breadth of knowledge and the relationship to be able to deliver that knowledge, and then showing that value.
I'm so proud and humbled that you quoted that. And I don't know if I've ever talked about this before, but I draw it out like a 4-leaf clover, which is meet them where they are, precisely, exactly. If they're eating McDonald's 7 times a week and doing nothing, like, that's where you meet them. And then get them out of pain, because firefighters, police officers, soldiers, they're all in pain.
Mm-hmm.
Even civilians, they're all in pain. So meet them where they are, get them out of pain, then help them do something that they truly want to do that they can't do, and be ready for the craziest spectrum of answers. Everything from, I want to be able to hop up and down off the floor to play with my grandkids, to, I want to rack out 100 push-ups. Like, you have to dig. What do these things mean to them? What does 100 push-ups represent? And then the last one, only then can you talk about performance, because then you've got the trust and the buy-in and you've created the relationship so that they're listening to you about the bed and the sleep and the water and all of those other things that make a big difference. I love this. Now, if you were listening around the edges, we're talking about coaching, but it's the same thing being a female in the fire service. It's the same thing. You have to be exceptionally capable. You have to be and live unoffended unless there's truly a reason. And then the last one is just you have to be freaking excellent. Did we miss anything on that conversation? I love that conversation.
I mean, I think we hit it all, which, by the way, summed up with that 4-leaf clover. That's stellar content all around. You could end it right there. We won't, but
we won't. Well, and the funny thing about that is that former NSCA coach, like he was the person in charge of the NSCA training center, Coach Scott Caulfield. He and I became friends on Instagram. We bonded over, can you guess what we bonded over, Jo?
Probably Alfie the Mini.
Alfie the Mini, dogs in general, but Alfie the Mini, we bonded over dogs, and we were having these conversations. And one day he just messaged me and he's like, do you want to be on the NSCA podcast? And I said, I don't know if I have anything to say. And he's like, oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. But anyway, we had this great conversation, and I had never verbalized that 4-leaf clover before. And it just sort of synthesized there. So that's the origin. 2019 National Conference. We recorded that podcast, and I've been using it ever since. So,
wow, that came out organically. That's even more impressive.
Well, you know, it's Scott and it's dogs, and it just makes me creative. Okay, that's
there you
just
go.
What happens.
That will do it. Scott will do it. Dogs will do it.
Dogs will do it. Speaking of Alfie the Mini, if you have, if you're not following Scott on Instagram, I think you should, because he's a fun guy to follow. But Alfie the Mini is an incredible little fuzzy dog who has got the greatest personality. She's a therapy dog, so he actually takes her to the weight room with him. And I have been promised she will be attending the conference, the national conference coming up this summer, and I will be able to hang out with Alfie the Mini. So it's a big deal.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
No pressure, Scott.
No pressure, Scott. Also, no pressure to get yourself scheduled, Scott. Just saying. Calling out Scott and not calling out Dave Terry.
Correct.
All right. Because I feel like you have solidified in the listener's brains your level of knowledge and competency. I want to use you as my subject matter expert. Are you okay with that? Can we dive down this hole?
I will do my best.
Okay. Here's the thing. A couple episodes ago, I believe it was episode 69, I talked specifically about doing physical fitness training while wearing fire gear.
Yes.
Now, there's two pieces to that. The first piece is that gear contains carcinogens. It's contaminated. And no matter how many times you wash it, it still contains carcinogens. And further, you get it brand new from the factory full of PFAS chemicals. So the gear, although it protects us in fires, it's also harming us. So there's that piece of it. But a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, a couple people have pushed back, and they've written me very respectful emails, which I appreciate. I love respectful emails. But they've said, listen, like, you have to do physical fitness training in your gear because that's what's improving your performance on the fire ground. Let me back up 1 second. By physical fitness training, I'm talking, Jo, about doing snatches, doing deadlifts, doing getting on an assault bike with your air pack in your gear, doing pull-ups. Those are the things that I'm talking about, physical fitness training. I'm not talking about job-specific tasks such as pulling a hose line, going up and down stairs, what else? Forcing a door, throwing a ladder. Okay, that makes sense to you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from your professional standpoint as a strength and conditioning coach who has designed programs for everything from basketball players to people going through the football combine to now soldiers and everything in between, let's talk about power. Do you believe that you can efficiently develop power by doing exercises to develop power while wearing structural firefighting gear? Let me hear your opinion.
Efficiently, no. And I would also add effectively, no. Just because you are, first of all, if you're doing something to develop power, such as an Olympic lift, Olympic lifting is a sport in and of itself. It's so wildly technical that you need every single piece of every single range of motion that you have available in order to complete those things. If you are in gear, you are not accessing all of your range of motion, right? And so, I mean, for me, if I can riff a little, like for me, the carcinogens thing is like a full stop. Like I'm going to not be wearing that as much as I can not be wearing that, right? But yes, I do get that people want to train very similarly to how they are going to play, work, whatever we're doing in quotation marks. That game day or that fireground situation. But I really think that, and I use this term a lot, and I think the first time I heard it was from my friend, Amanda Visick, who is a sports psychologist, who does tons of research on a lot of this stuff, mostly in sport for children, but also other Canadian, Swedish sports federations and things like that. But improving your physical literacy, and by that I mean just having this broad array of abilities of movement and doing that first in a controlled environment without load, not at speed, and not reactive, so that your nervous system understands this is a safe place that we can be. This is a safe position that we can be in. Okay, cool. So that when you introduce those things in an uncontrolled environment, under load, at speed, in a reactive situation, that your nervous system is like, all right, cool, yeah, we've been here before, instead of being like, what is this? And then totally breaking down and not being able to organize, and then all of a sudden you're injured from something silly. And so I think that you can improve your physical literacy so much more by separating those two things out. You've got your training in your PTs or whatever you call them, your just regular workout clothes. And then you can do stuff under load that might be the next step up, that a load that mimics full kit, full gear, but something that's like not gonna have all those carcinogens, that carcinogen exposure, I should say. So it is adding to that load. Hey, throw some sweats on, throw something else on, to create a little bit of a hotter environment if that's what you're looking to do. We can mimic these things, I think, without adding the added risk. And then there's the time where, guess what? You have to train. Like you're doing firefighter training in your gear, right? You're like doing like pulling hoses, doing all the things, climbing the ladders, like crawling through small spaces, doing all those things. And that's when I think you do that, right? And when if I can use an army example, like I'm not going to have the guys in their full kit doing workouts. They're going to do their workouts in their PTs. They might then add something like a weight vest or a ruck or something like that for other training just to get their bodies used to load. And then when they're actually doing training exercises, then they're going to be in their full uniform kit, all kitted out and all that stuff. But hopefully the training that we've put them through has given them enough physical literacy that their body goes, oh yeah, cool, we've been here before. And yes, you don't want the first time you're on the fire ground to be the first time you're in your gear. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. And I'm 1,000% sure that that's not what Annette's saying. But we want to limit that exposure.
I am a big fan of that term, physical literacy. I think at one time that was in my brain, and I think it got purged in the hard drive, so I'm putting that back in my brain. And so one of the specific pushbacks that I've heard was, but if I do snatches in my gear, I'm actually challenging my range of motion more by pushing against the fabric and the fit of the gear. And they were not super satisfied with my answer that I gave them. So I would love to hear what you have to say about that.
That's interesting because, I mean, there are other ways, again, that we can mimic that challenge. I just don't know that you would want to do that with a snatch, right? Like, I don't want to, because why? Because am I snatching on the fire ground? Like, that's my question. Like, why do I need to have my shoulders? I just struggle. I don't understand why you would need your shoulders to be challenged more in that sense. And if you want to do a little bit more challenge, how about some like end range, functional range conditioning, or some mobility, or some like band work? It would be more to me like the mobility that challenges end ranges of motion if I'm looking for a challenge at my joints.
It's such a good answer. I love it. The other thing that I have heard is that the reason that I work out in my gear is it makes me mentally tough. I've also heard that in Proby school or in the academy, they use physical fitness training sort of as punishment. Punishment isn't the right word, but they use physical fitness training to make them mentally tough. So I want to hear what you have to say about using physical challenges to increase mental toughness.
I think physical challenges are a phenomenal way to increase physical toughness. I don't think that needs to be elicited by wearing your gear again. I think that there are multiple ways to increase the mental, cognitive, whatever type of resilience like that you're looking for, whether that is, putting a time limit on it, putting, some high stakes reward or punishment involved with it, whatever that might be, or just making it really suck and making it really suck together with somebody else, your teammates or whatever that might be. And I think like there's no, to me, in my, this is like Coach Jo anecdotal, wisdom or whatever you want to call it. Maybe it's dumb, but I think there is no better, I guess, stressor that helps prepare you for the other stressors in life, that cross stressor adaptation, where you do something really, really tough in a training session and you actually, your body doesn't know the difference between that and, COVID happening, or, you going through a breakup, or you tearing your ACL or something like that. Whatever that high stress is, you are able to manage it because, again, you have introduced that to your mind, to your nervous system, to your body as a whole, and your body goes, oh yeah, we've been here before. Cool. Versus like, oh my God, I've never been this stressed out before. I've never felt this kind of pain. I've never felt this level of urgency. I don't know what to do. And then I fall apart. I think training in general is exceptional for being able to have resilience in other areas of your life. So I would agree with the idea as a whole, but I also don't think it needs to be elicited in any specific way, let alone one that could be a risk for exposure to carcinogens.
I agree with that 100%. And I'm going to hit you with one more training question and then transition to soldiers to sidelines. But let's talk about the fact that, first off, let's be honest. Many firefighters do not do enough physical fitness.
Sure.
Let's be honest. So if you are doing any physical fitness, I commend you. No matter what it is, I commend you. I would love if you did not do that in your gear, but if you're doing physical fitness, I commend you. But there seems to be this theme of it doesn't matter what I do, as long as I get hot, sweaty, and tired, I am training for performance. And I feel like we're missing the point there. We're missing the point with hot, sweaty, and tired.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm guilty of it sometimes too. I'm like, that maybe wasn't that great. But I also, in my mind, can then tell myself, no, this is programmed and it's how it's supposed to be. This is what, the training stimulus was for the day. Like, just go with it. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, when I'm programming now, especially with the population that I work with, they love being hot, sweaty, and tired. Like you said, they like being out of breath. They want to know that they did work, right? And I think there are ways that even like you can give them that spoonful of sugar without breaking down their bodies. A lot of the culture in the Army is that you just run and run and run and run. And a lot of times I have this talk with people and I'm like, so what are you training to run for, And they do have certain like 2 mile and 5 mile gates that they need to pass every so often. And that is, they need to pass those things at a certain time hack, and it's all of that. However, there's some like more downtimes in the year where they really don't need to run for anything, or they can pass that super well, super easily. And I'm like, so why are you running all the time? And they're like, some of them say, I love it. And I say, okay, that's cool.
Awesome.
I'm okay with that. Like, if you love it, because some of them like, I hate it so much. I do it every day. And I'm like, wow, your life must be so miserable. But I try to let them know, like, okay, well, you don't have to run every day, right? And you don't even have to run like 3 times a week right now. And they're like, wait, what? And so kind of just giving them that permission as the professional, being like, hey, listen, like, you're just putting miles on the car and driving in circles right now. If you're not training for anything specific, like, how are your knees feeling? Yeah, not so great, right? Why don't we put you off foot for a little bit? Why don't we get you on the bike? Why don't we get you on the rower? Why don't we get you on the ski erg? Why don't we get you on the Jacob's ladder? Like, anything that's not a continuous single leg plyometric for miles and miles, just absolutely destroying your joints. And I'm not like anti-running. Listen, I've run a marathon. I used to run avidly before I tore my ACL, and I do enjoy it too myself every once in a while, just to go for a run. However, when it's like, I have to do this, I hate it, and also I'm not training for anything specific, I'm like, we need to take this out of your life. And there are other ways to get sweaty. There are other ways. Like, I've had people come up to me and say like, oh my gosh, like, I have to start every training session with a mile run. And so like, sometimes I'm like, okay, why don't we do that 3 days a week? And then can I switch it to something else for the other 2? Would you be open to that? And sometimes they are not, and then sometimes they are. And then it's like, hey, you know what? My knees feel a lot better. So just like you said, it's part of that meeting them where they are. Like, okay, you're eating McDonald's 12 times a week. Can we do 11? And then can we do 11 and then like one small fry? Like, can you do that?
A side note, in the old house that I lived in, I had a neighbor. She was lovely. Her name was Danielle. She moved out years ago, but she and I were talking one day. She had, I think it was her uncle who was a Marine. I'm probably getting this all wrong. He might have been in the army. I don't know. He ran 20 miles every single day.
Oof.
Oof. I was speechless. Like, first of all, that takes a tremendous amount of time.
It's just the time for me. That's the first thing. I'm like, when do you have the time?
I mean, a decent marathon, 26.2, is 4 hours. So even if he was a great runner, he's probably running 3 hours.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And like, again,
no.
like people are built different, man. Like maybe that's just like his jam and he's just going to do that forever and he's going to feel fine about it. My thing is that when people are like in active pain and they're like, this hurts and I hate it and blah, 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 but I have to do it. I'm like, what if you didn't? What if you didn't have to do it? Can I talk to you?
But what if you didn't have to? I love that question.
Come sit down. Yeah.
All right. It's all back to meeting them where they are. That's the bottom line.
Correct.
All right. I want to, because it's Friday night, I know that you probably have something fabulous planned for the weekend. Always. I want to be respectful of your time. So I want to start winding down, but can you tell us a little bit? One of my friends from a long distance friend from the fire service, shout out Matt Spade, recently took the Soldiers to Sidelines Adaptive Athlete course. And you've been with Soldiers to Sidelines, is it 4 years now?
2020. So three years. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us, what is Soldiers to Sidelines? Because I think a tremendous amount of our fire service personnel are previous military. And so this could be very interesting to them.
Awesome. Yeah. So Soldiers to Sidelines, we empower veterans, service members, military spouses, and Gold Star families to become character-based coaches within their own communities. So we have a bunch of different, we call them silos essentially, or different lines of effort. And so we have football, basketball, lacrosse, sports performance. Those were our main ones that we started with. And we have recently added soccer, rugby, and adaptive athletics. So all of those things are where we have online seminars that are 5 days long. It's a tremendous time investment. However, it's free for service members, veterans, mil spouses, and Gold Star families. And so what they're able to do is get this certification through us, and that gives them entree into our membership development program, which is our educational program. Any live events that we might have, and we have those kind of regionally every once in a while if we have enough soldier coaches, and those are coaches that we have certified in the area. So for instance, we recently had one on Fort Liberty here in North Carolina with the Wake Forest men's basketball coaching staff. Last year we had one with the App State men's basketball coaching staff. We've done the Salute to Service with the New York Jets, the Salute to Service game, and our soldier coaches were able to be down on the field, kind of get recognized as veterans during halftime, and all wrapped up into that. Many of the times, if not all of the times, is some educational piece in how to become a better coach in terms of like teaching and coaching pedagogy, what people would call maybe the soft skills of coaching, and then mixed in with that, which we think is some of like the less important things, is just like X's and O's. Like, here are some drills, here are some plays, but from world-class phenomenal coaches. And so It's great. It's been amazing. The coaches we've been able to have speak for us, just because so many people are willing to give back to that veteran community. And I am so thankful for those people, as well as, the people that we're trying to serve. And one of the other things is that we hope to create this purpose beyond service, right? So they're used to having a team or being in a leadership position as a service member. And then after service, feeling a little lost, not knowing where their team is, what they're doing, what their purpose is. And coaching our youth, coaching even at a higher level, can really help make them still feel connected and also have that continuing purpose on beyond their service to the country.
And if there is someone that's qualified, that you mentioned, the spouses, the veterans, the active duty, if there's someone that's qualified, how would they go about applying to the program?
So soldierstosidelines.org. You can check out our upcoming coaching certification seminars. They are 1 or 2 will be listed at all times. And then if you're wondering, I think I'm going to redo this. Can you hear that?
Yeah, what was that?
It's literally just leaf blowers. They do nothing. They're just blowing nothing around, and they come and make all the noise at least once a week. Can you still hear it?
Yeah.
It's so loud.
I feel like this is funny though. Maybe we should leave it in.
I mean, that's fine. It's one of the things. There's 2 things in my neighborhood that make me angry, and they both involve. Well, there's 3 things in my neighborhood.
The car alarm. Is that the third
one
thing?
is the car alarm that the man just lets go off every single day, and I don't know if it's because it's broken, but no less than 6 honks. This man is just letting his car alarm go off every single day. These leaf blower fellas, who come all the way up to my front door because I'm on like the 3rd floor, and they're just leaf blowing, and you go out there, nothing looks different. It is still very cobwebby and gross. And then the 3rd thing is people taking my parking spot, but I've been passive aggressive and aggressive about that, and nobody does it anymore, so we're good. I've got cones. I've got lots of things.
You could be like the Chicago people during a snowstorm when they shovel out, a parking spot, then they put chairs and like picnic tables, and maybe you should do that.
I've done that in DC. Well, the only problem with it is like I just want to like smoothly pull right back into my spot.
Right.
When I get home, but I have put a cone out. I've been pretty petty. I bought like traffic cones on Amazon and put them in there. Oh man. All right, back to Soldiers to Sidelines.
Now back to our report.
Don't remember what I was saying. Oh, they can go on soldierstosidelines.org. And then they can also check our social media, Facebook, Soldiers to Sidelines, and at Soldiers to Sidelines on Instagram. And we will announce, the upcoming seminars. There's usually 1 to 2 per sport silo per year. And then we also run one during March, the Military Women's Coaching Certification Seminar for female service members during Women's Appreciation Month.
I love it. All right, so I'm going to put in the show notes how to get a hold of Soldiers to Sidelines. If a listener might have a question for you, what would be the best way to get a hold of you?
That would be either email. You can do Johannah. Say it right.
Wait, Johannah? Is that how you say it?
No. Johannah, JOHANNAH, at soldierstosidelines.org. Or you can get me at coach_Jo_ on Instagram. I'm usually pretty responsive there. And I forgot to mention one of the most important sports silos that we have is sports performance. My bad. I named all the actual field and court sports, but sports performance, which I am the director of. We run a power sports performance and an endurance sports performance seminar. Endurance sports performance seminar is coming up October 15th, 16th, whatever the Sunday is there. And then again, that women's one is another one that I run.
Incredible. Well, we don't have to talk about dogs because you don't have a dog. It's pretty sad. So I think we can just summarize it like, don't piss off Coach Joe. Don't run the leaf blower. Don't beep the car horn. And don't take her parking spot.
Yeah.
And you should be pretty golden.
It really takes a lot. Like, it just takes straight up inconsideration to make me upset. But I mean, once that inconsideration is clear, yeah, I'll get upset.
And then you get aggressive.
Yeah, and then I get aggressive.
Well, this is going to be the best sign off ever because what I can say is that Coach AZ and Coach JZ
Heyo
are officially out. Thanks for being my guest, friend.
It was so much fun. Thank you for having me.
All of the love and hugs.
Love and hugs.